Welcome to Stay Sane. We have Elijah Lee on our podcast today. Elijah, we both go to Maggie Walker together. That's how I know him. You're involved in a lot of activism, and you've been posting on the news multiple times. So, when did you kind of start with your political journey?
No, yeah, absolutely. And I'm always more than happy to help a fellow dragon out. We gotta stick together in this world.
Oh yeah.
Um, but no, I think I got started probably when I was around 10 years old. Um, well, when I was in first grade, a friend of mine told me how she had experienced some abuse at home. And this hit me like a ton of bricks, right? Because when you're in first grade, you think, oh, life is well and life is perfect and everyone happy and everyone kind of gets along, and that's not what I saw. And on top of that, it wasn't like my mom was sitting me down to talk about this. This is like a real life scenario where your friend, someone you care about, is going through something, right? Um, and so that was something that really traveled with me for a long time. And then also my mom was always really, really big on me being educated, right? Learning about Huey Newton and Fred Hampton and Bobby Seale and Malcolm X and all these amazing people, John Lewis, Angela Davis, Assata Shakur, and the list just only gets longer as I grow older. But it was these messages from these amazing historical leaders that really showed me that change is always possible. um, they showed me that I don't have to wait to be able to do something that I believe in. And that was recognizing that, yes, it's going to be hard for me because of the color of my skin, right? The last thing people want to see is this little brown boy sitting on a podium yelling, long live the revolution and let's unite as a people to work for the working class. So the last thing they want to hear a poor kid from a rural community say that we as a community need to hold our police accountable. The last thing they want from any kid is to hear them say that racism is a problem, that gender discrimination is a problem, that homophobia is a problem, right? And so I soon recognized that there was going to be a level of sacrifice. However, I also knew that if my voice even either A, helps someone, or B, inspires someone else to get involved, then I would be satisfied. You know what I mean? If me talking about these issues gets one person involved, then I'm gonna be happy. That's a life well lived. Um, and so from there, I think I started my first march when I was 10. And then the light bulb went off, the snowball began to roll down the hill.
Mhm.
Um, and so from there I was public speaking, and then I raised $3,000 for a pediatric safe room in North Carolina to make sure that young people, when they did go to the hospital, they felt safe and comforted. Um, and then when I moved to Virginia during the pandemic, that was really hard because I can't go to events and I can't do things like that. And so I think it was my third March that we ended up having to do virtual. And I didn't really like that. I really enjoyed community relationships, so I instead took that year as a time to rebuild and reorganize. And so I founded my own nonprofit, Hero Voices, and I raised $12,500 for another pediatric safe room here in Richmond. Um, and then I got involved in politics, and that's a whole nother story, as you know. Me and politics is crazy, but got involved in politics for some reason.
Yeah. Well, you said pediatric safe rooms.
Mhm.
What are those specifically?
Yeah, so a pediatric safe room. So I really decided to do this when, I had brothers that play football, and I remember going into these hospital rooms with when something bad would happen on the field, and they were always just so uninviting. I mean, these places are grim, they're dark, no one wants to be there. Um, and so then I could only imagine what it was like that. Okay, so you just saw your parents get dragged away in handcuffs. Um, you have this massive problem in your head where it's the people that love me are also causing me the most pain. Um, you are having people coming in and expecting the bruises that you were always taught to hide. You feel alone because no one is by your side. I just couldn't imagine it. You know what I mean? I grew up in a house where there was always love and there was always someone to give you a hug. And even going to school, this about us, but even and I feel our group of friends, we're all very loving people. If someone needs a hug, you get a hug. You know what I mean? And there was these young people that just didn't have this. It was these kids, like these are 5 year olds that didn't have that. Um, and this really, really, really stuck with me. So I think that I just needed to do something. So I created these rooms where we go in and we have specialists look at them, and then we also have kids come in and offer their opinion. And these are rooms are absolutely beautiful. They have things on the walls, they're painted these really nice pastel colors. There's TVs in there, there's books in there, there's iPads in there, there's stuffed animals that the kids can take home. There's all these amazing things. And what it is that it's just to calm them down, right? It's to give them a safe space that they can go to where they can kind of just breathe. But also we're seeing oftentimes that these are not only places where people are just breathing, but these are places where, because a kid can now sit here and play a game or like read a book, it's also easy for an officer to come in and talk to this kid to find out what has been happening. It's also easier for a doctor or a nurse to come in and say, like, how can I best help you? What has been going on? What do we need to do?
So,
Um,
so the safe room is something that you created through Hear Our Voices.
yeah, so the safe room, well, the first one was before Hero Voices.
Mhm.
Um, and then it was really hard to collect funding and fundraising as an individual. And so when we were able to create an organization, that was a little bit easier. And so that's how we got a nonprofit. And that led us to the one in Richmond that I did most recently. And so finished that up not too long ago, actually.
Do you guys have any other like programs with Hear Our Voices that you do besides the safe room?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do is a march, and we do this every year. This is the same one I led when I was 10 years old. But now having an organization behind it is it's a lot more fun, honestly. So that's coming up in April. That's on April 29th. It's actually going to be our first one here in Richmond. And so super excited about that. Been planning it all day, getting everything in order. So that's always really fun. Um, and then so we do that. And then another thing we do that we just kind of started actually is like activist trainings. Um, and so like we bring as many young people as we can into a room or on a Zoom call, and we're able to talk to them about like, okay, what are the different steps of having to get involved? Like, how do you contact your legislators? How do you write bills? How do you lead a march? How do you fundraise? How do you identify a problem in your community and then create a solution? Um, and so we did one, I think it was like right before or right after Christmas, and now we're doing one again, hopefully in July.
Wow.
Um, and so hopefully more kids can come in, since it'll be summer.
The fact that you did this as like a young kid in our generation is just crazy. But with that, like you've also like built a staff for Hear Our Voices, I believe.
Mhm.
And those are
Yeah,
all relatively older people that you've had contacts with. So how'd you kind
yeah.
of like get included with them?
Yeah, so with all the organizations that I help oversee, it's really just about overtime connections. Like my vice president on the Hero Voices board is an old teacher of mine, who is like the best teacher I could have ever asked for. He was always there for me. I mean, this is the same man that in math class justified teaching me about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. You know what I mean? And so which had no correlation. Um, but all the people on my board have always found a way to sew into me. Like our treasurer, for example, he was the first person to really introduce me into like law and what is law and how do we use law to our advantage. Like this is the man that showed me I could be politically involved, right? Um, and the same thing goes for all the organizations that I help oversee with Voters of Tomorrow. Our national director he's an adult, but I think he's still pretty young. But he's like brilliantly amazing. Like he's the best. And so, but I think it's just like you find people that so into your life, and those are people that you like stick with.
Right. And you have family in North Carolina, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's how you do most of your like advertisement in North
Hmm.
Carolina.
Yeah. So recently with my move up to Virginia, we've kind of had to
Mhm.
um, make the transition over to Virginia, which is kind of weird figuring this out. You get a profile in one place, you learn the people, you learn the systems, everyone kind of learns who you are, and then you're picked up and moved over. And you have to start all over again. So hopefully I don't have to do this anytime soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so it's always kind of weird. I don't know. It's always kind of weird.
Yeah. But you started it in North Carolina? Did you start
Hmm.
in Virginia or North Carolina?
I started in North Carolina.
So do you feel like it's different in Virginia? Like, is it like harder to reach the people, easier to reach the people?
Yeah, so in North Carolina, it was a really, really small town.
Mhm.
Um, but I will say like my advocacy efforts changed dramatically. Like a lot of the work that I was doing in North Carolina was like on the ground, talking to people, one-on-one, social to social,
Mhm.
speaking events. And I still do a lot of that in Virginia, a lot of that. However, being so close to like the Capitol and being so close to all these other organizations, it's been a lot easier to say, okay, like let's get down and lobby, let's get down and make sure people are going to vote. Let's help these young people pre-register and register to vote. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so there's a lot that kind of goes into it. I think that Virginia has allowed me a lot of opportunities and resources, but again, I'd be nothing without the support from my native North Carolinians.
Right, right. And you're, as
Yeah.
we said before, like you're young in the political
Yeah.
alley, but you're always trying to get other young people involved. So is that something that you were kind of taught when you were a kid, just like bring people up with you?
Yeah, I think so. I have a motto. Well, it's not even mine. There's like a saying that's like, if you can get the door open, then it is your job to hold that door open.
Mhm.
Um, and also like a lot of this work, it is a lot to do. Like, I remember one day we were at Maggie Walker, and I had to call all these legislators to set up these meetings. I'm like, guys, this is a lot of people to call. So I just pull everyone in a room and we just knock them all out. And we had like 20 by the end of the day. I was so happy with that.
Wow.
Um, but I think it's also like just good that people like learn these types of things,
Mhm.
because you don't have to be politically involved to know your legislator. You know what I mean? Like that's just good to know, because
Mhm.
there's going to be a day where you see a problem and it's up to you to make a solution. You know what I mean? And I hate being the one to say that, but there are problems in our world. There's a lot of problems in our world. And John Lewis, like he once said that if not me, then who? If not now, then when? Right.
Mhm.
And so it's unfortunately up to us as young people to take up that torch and to say, the world we live in today is not perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, Whether it's another Tyree Nichols or another George Floyd or another mass shooting, it's not perfect. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And the action is not perfect either. Like, we've had more people die in mass shootings than in 9/11, and
Mhm.
we've seen little to no action done to bring awareness to this issue. We've seen little to no action done in the realm of gun reform.
Mhm.
However, the action that has been done has been led by young people. The action that's been done around climate change has been led by young people. The action that has been done to make sure that women have a right to choose, even after Roe v. Wade, has been led by young people. So all these movements that we're looking at across the country, they're being led by young people. Now, are young people always in the limelight? No. It is always young people that we're pushing to the very front and glorifying them? No. But I can promise, I say this with confidence, that there's always a young person somewhere who is working on an issue. Um, However, again, I say there's just not enough, right? So when we see issues, we can't just say we'll fix it when it's older, because frankly, we can't always promise that we'll become older.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you think it's led by young people relatively because of the willingness for the older generations to push down those efforts on them?
yeah, I do.
Like those responsibilities, they leave it to the younger people?
Yeah, I unfortunately do, because you know, talking to some of our older generations, they looked at climate change and they said that sounds like a tomorrow problem. Well, we're the tomorrow. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? Like, and then also you have to keep in mind that some issues are new, right? And the change that is needed could seem radical, right? Like banning assault weapons, that sounds radical to older organizations. But to us, that says, okay, if you have thousands of kids dying every single day because of this sole purpose, why are we keeping this sole purpose legal? You know what I mean? And so I definitely think that it is because of older generations' refusal to acknowledge and fight some of these issues that we as young people have to. You know what I mean? Because I don't know about you, but I'm not really ready to look my kid dead in the eyes and say, like, I've been doing school shooting drills since I was your age. You can do them too. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not prepared to do that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not prepared to do that.
Right.
Um, and like, parents are now getting involved in this fight because they're having to look their kids in the eyes and say that. And
Hmm.
so I don't know, but I think more and more young people every day are like picking up the call and saying that, like, hey, like, we have to do something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Like
it's really as
there's a
simple as
lot
that.
put on our generation. There's a lot put,
Yeah,
especially with, like you said, child abuse. Like that's an issue that's been going on for a long time, and that hasn't changed. But there's still more responsibility put on our generation. And like people like
yeah.
you, like you're taking it in your own hands and doing something about it. And I really respect that. Um, but as a young person, is it a relatively easy path for you because the older generations kind of expect you to do that?
Well, I I don't think that it's I wish it was
Mhm.
easy, but the problem is, like, older generations expect you to do it while older generations don't really want you to do it. You know what I
Uh,
mean? So,
yeah.
like, I'm not always first to be invited into rooms. If I'm not constantly working, then I'm left. You know what I mean? And that's with all young people. Is that the March for Our Lives movement, for example, has had to work tirelessly to get where they are today. You know what I mean? And a lot of
Mhm.
that's because people do not respect young people involved. Um, but I think something that you also have to keep in mind is, like, I mean, you go to Maggie Walker with me, we're in high school. Like, we as young people have a full-time job, and that is being a student. You know what I mean? Whether it is homework or going to class or engaging in social conversations, or somebody oftentimes, like, the anxiety and depression that comes with school a lot. Like, it's hard being a student. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And add on to that this need for social change, it can get a lot. Um, and it's like, and some people, they just, I don't know. I think that it's really hard sometimes being a student activist.
Mhm.
Um, and that, like, a lot of the General Assembly committee meetings are during the day. I can't miss school to go sit in a committee meeting. And if
Right.
I can't go to that committee meeting, I don't know what's being passed. And if I don't know what's being passed, I don't know what I need to fight. And if I don't know what I need to fight, then we have more problems. You know what I mean?
Mhm. But
And so it's definitely hard.
Maggie Walker is relatively like the type of school that's lenient in that case. Like I feel like a lot of the teachers at
Yeah.
Maggie Walker are like, yeah, you can take that phone call. So
Yeah.
is
No,
it you'd say it's
Maggie
better?
Walker's one of the best schools ever.
Yeah.
Maggie Walker's one of the best schools ever. I love Maggie Walker. They've been so supportive with everything, like, even just having to have conversations. Like, there's been times I've had teachers where I'm just like, guys, I need to talk this through really quickly. And they're like, okay, like, shoot, fire. And I'm like, got it. Great. Thank you. Um, but no, and I think, like, it feels like, I don't know about you, but it feels like an epicenter of just people that are all like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, we can
Yeah.
get down with it. You know what I mean? Like, not
Yeah.
at every high school are you gonna have kids that are gonna spend their lunches calling legislators.
Right.
But
Right.
you have the beauty of Maggie Walker.
Yeah. And you said you've passed bills
Mhm.
as a
Well,
14-year-old? Oh my God.
working on it, working on it.
Yeah.
So in June to,
Mhm.
like, July, you write them. You look at ideas, you think about, okay, what can we do? And so I had, like, a list of 100 ideas. Um, and then you have to break those things down. You have to look at these problems and find specific solutions that you can actually write into legislation. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, and so then from August 1st to August 18th, right before school, I had like 40 meetings with lawmakers, just asking them to carry my bills. And I got about five of them picked up. And then recently, one of them died. It was a bill that would mandate a student representative on every single school board.
Mhm.
Um, that's been a fight that's been going on for years. Like, I'm not the first one to put this bill in,
Mhm.
but it was still hard. But
Right.
we also have, like, another bill that has just unanimously passed the House of Delegates. And that will make it easier for people to get jobs, and for us to fight the opioid epidemic, which is amazing, right?
Mhm.
Um, Another one is that it will better equip our teachers to recognize, like, child abuse and human trafficking, and better equip our teachers to, like, help them get through that.
Mhm.
Um, There is a House Joint Resolution in right now that would have 16-year-olds vote in local elections only. I'm personally really excited about that. I hope it passes the House of Delegates and the Senate. Um, but we've put it in several times and it just hasn't made it by. But every single time you put in a bill, that's one more step towards progress.
Right. Can you do these? Can you like bring up these bills through Hear Our Voices? Like, can you relate those two?
Yeah, so that's one of the hard parts. So Hero Voices is a 501(c)(3). That means that we are nonpartisan, completely nonpartisan. However, we still are charged with patroning issues that are important to young people. So our job at Hero Voices is to merely educate and to empower young people to get involved. So our entire mission is just that we're dedicated to the empowerment of all young people
Mhm.
by giving them what they need to become their own activist. However, it is in my work in working with all these other young people that I have recognized that, like, hey, young people need free lunches, right? Like, this is a massive problem that we're seeing time and time again. So now I can use my work with legislation and combine it with my work with Hero Voices to now say, okay, like, young people, you said that you guys need free lunches. Here's legislation that would do that. It's up to you to get it through. Um,
Mhm.
so a lot of my job with Hero Voices is just to give people the resources they need in order to be successful, which is
Right.
one of the most fulfilling things I could ever be doing right now.
And in the training, are you training them to be like like general activists, or are you training them to like what are you training them to do?
Yeah. So I'm training them to find
Mhm.
your purpose, right? Like for me, that started off as Child Abuse, but as you know, it's like grown dramatically. You know what I mean? Like now I find myself speaking at a Black History event, talking about systemic racism, talking about police brutality. And then I'm driving in the car, driving an hour, and I'm gonna go talk to people about the importance of men standing with women as we fight for the right to choose. You know what I mean? And so like it's about finding your purpose, find out what makes you happy, find out where in this fight you feel like you fit, and then after that, you guys find out what you like doing. You know what I mean? Like fundraising, it's not for everyone.
Mhm.
Politics, not for everyone. Marching, not for everyone. Like you have to find things that work for you. You know what I mean? I think that the problem with advocacy is that when people hear it, they immediately think, oh, you're either marching or in politics. And that's so much deeper than that. You know what I mean? Like we need people writing bills. We need people writing op-eds. We need people writing these stories. And then we also need people that are making like budgets. We need the math in here. Like we need people deciding how to go about this. We need strategists who can tell us how to move as an organization, how to move as a campaign, how to move as a political party.
Mhm.
There's so many different aspects of advocacy that in these trainings we go through them on a very surface level. And
Mhm.
that way, if you're interested in it, you can just follow up with me and we'll go through it in depth, knee deep. And then on top of that, I will also use the connections that I have been very blessed to have, and I'll be able to give those out to you and say, okay, great. Like here's a legislator working on making sure that we have free lunches. How about you talk to him and you guys figure something out? You know what I mean? And I think that's just my job as a fellow young person is to make sure young people have a chance to get in the room.
So I feel like you realize or you recognize that changes within the people, not
Yeah,
necessarily, yeah, changes within the people. So you're targeting the younger generations. Wow, that's
exactly.
really smart. That's really smart.
Exactly.
Um, but like as you pass those bills and as you work with those people, do you feel like it's like taken against you that you're younger? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I can't imagine passing a bill right now. Like,
Yeah. It's definitely hard. You
mhm,
know, there are plenty of legislators that don't believe I should be doing what I'm doing. Um, there are legislators that don't believe they want young people to know the process. They don't want young people to be involved in the process. Does
mhm,
that make any sense?
mhm,
Um, there are plenty of legislators that think that some of the bills I introduce are crazy, right? For example, when I introduced the student board bill, they thought it was absolutely absurd. Most of them did actually. That they thought it was absolutely absurd that we would ever have a student on the board on the school board especially when that school board is serving the students, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like we go to a school board and there's no one representing us but a bunch of adults. That doesn't really click in my mind. Um, but there are plenty of people that don't believe that I should be doing the work that I'm doing with my bills. But frankly, there are also people who are everyday adults who don't believe I should be leading marches. There are people that don't believe I should be leading organizations. There are people that don't believe that I should be involved in nonprofits. You know what I mean? And that's with everything, though. Like, I don't know. I've had a chance to talk to a bunch of activists recently, and we're just remembering the times where people have come up to us and just said, like, sit down, be quiet, learn your place, like, go figure out something else to do. You're causing trouble. You're making a racket. Like, you need to just sit down and be a student. Um, and then there's also this part where they have free reign to attack you. Like when you get in this arena, unfortunately, people can be kind of cruel at times. You know what I mean? So I've had friends that have been told some really awful things. And people have attacked her like physically. Like there was a friend, Olivia Juliana, who not a friend, she's like one of my heroes, actually. She's really, really young and she's doing a lot in Texas. And she had Matt Gaetz, who is a sitting congressman, come after her for her physical appearance. And that's politics. That's advocacy. But what's really important to remember is that she used that to her advantage and then raised thousands of dollars for women who are seeking pro-choice resources and services, right?
Yeah.
So it's about taking those blows and turning them into motivation. So like, yeah, there are people that don't want me being where I am today. But again, frankly, like there are people that don't believe I should be at Maggie Walker. You know what I mean? People will look at Maggie Walker and say like, oh, we don't believe that, a biracial person of all people should be a Maggie Walker. Or we don't believe someone who comes from the Middle Eastern or like is an Asian American Pacific Islander. We don't believe they should be a Maggie Walker. And like there's all these people that always just don't want you to succeed. However, you also have to always remember that what you're doing is changing lives. You know what I mean? Every day that you go to your school and you're like the oddball out or whatever, you're paving the way. You know what I mean? And I think that's just all that I keep in mind, and hoping that maybe if one day a 3-year-old sees even a sliver of the work that I'm doing and they grow up to be the change and to do something truly phenomenal, then that's a work well done. You know what I mean?
I feel like you have like a really high concept of it that even like I've heard about this concept of like being the odd one out, like
Mhm.
being the change you want to be. Um, but I feel like you developed this really early. And I feel like that's because it's the way you were kind of brought up because
Absolutely.
the way I was brought up was really like all to my parents, like all to my parents, my brother, my Indian community, like the people around me, and they've like played an impact on the way I think about things. And the way
Mhm.
you think about things is like really advanced for how young you started. And I just like I can't get over how young you were when you started that. But it's like the fact that you had to like approach the child abuse situation and you were like 10 when you first heard about that. When did you start making like actual moves against that? By 12?
Yeah, so I found out about the child abuse when I was in first grade.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not great at math, as you know. And so, but I led my first march when I was 10. I led it in March and I turned 10 in December. So fresh 10-year-old, really, really short back then. Like I feel like I'm a bit taller now. I was super duper short back then. And I like when I say short, I mean we had to have like a 3-foot step stool so I could see over the podium. It was like bad. But we pulled it off. Some way, somehow we pulled it off. I don't know. I think like I've always seen the work that I'm doing as like merely playing my part. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like I think that like when you live in a community, it's like everyone's job. It's everyone's job to do something. And some people are gonna go off and they're gonna be the president of the United States. Some people are gonna go off and they're gonna fix healthcare, and some people are going to go off and march and write bills, and I'm really happy with that if that's where I end up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I see that as like merely doing my part. um
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I hope that like every young person always knows that like the work that I do, it's not at all special. You know what I mean? Like everyone can do that. It takes a little hard work,
Mhm.
some stressful nights, and a lot of caffeine. As you know, it's not great, but it exists. A lot of caffeine, and you get the job done. But no, but yeah, and it's like having great friends like you though, and everyone at Maggie Walker and things like that. Like coming to school, it can be kind of stressful, and then going home and working with this can be kind of stressful. But then like when we're all at lunch just laughing, like that is the highlight of my day. And so I think it's also about finding like the little pockets of joy and peace in life.
Right. And I know you work with Teen Dems,
Mhm.
the Teen Dems. So how does that kind of affect?
Yeah. So with them, I am really lucky because the work that I do with them, I was actually already doing. So for them, I just help, like my job is just to write bills, and just to make ideas for bills and then talk to legislators about bills. And I was doing that like anyways. Like that's why I applied. So then I could just keep doing the work that I was doing. And now I'm working with a really cool organization on it. And so that's always been really, really fun. But like even if this is gonna sound kind of weird, but like that's like one of my only like really political things. A lot of the organizations I work with, including Here Are Voices, including Voters of Tomorrow, they're all completely nonpartisan. And so a lot of the legislation that I'm really producing is focused on individuals and not like these massive things. Like I don't think women's rights should be partisan. You know what I mean? Like, I think closing the wage gap and making it a dollar for dollar, I think that should be everyone is down for that. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, that's not always the case. But I feel like we're getting there. You know what I mean? I think that we're getting to a point where we have like basic human decency in
Mhm.
life.
And well, like to people that really don't know, but could you like explain what Teen Democrats is like working towards as like a
Yeah.
community?
Yeah. So the Virginia Teen Democrats, our job as a whole is to ensure that young people are being represented in the political spectrum, right? So our job is to make sure that when Democrats who work in Congress, who work in the General Assembly, who work on our school boards and our city council, when Democrats are making their laws, they're not only going to the top people at the Democratic Party, but they're also looking to us. They're saying, wow, young people are moving and things like that. And then our next job is to encourage and empower young people to get out and use their voice and vote while also making change, right? So I can't vote yet, right? Um, I can't even register to vote yet. Like I can't do anything yet.
Mhm.
But I can go out and canvass for Jen McClellan, who's gonna be the next congresswoman, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. And so, but what I can do is like write bills. And so our job is just to basically do that. Like our job is to make sure young people understand that they have a place in the political process. They have a spot here.
Right.
And plus, if someone tries to like deny you your seat at the table, you take it. You pull up
Mhm.
a lawn chair and you sit at that table because you belong there. You know what I mean? And there's
Mhm.
gonna be people that try to do that. But we as young people also have to understand that we have a lot of power. You know what I mean? Like like always take a moment to think about like headlines, right? These headlines that are saying like, oh, like 13-year-old kid marches to end in gun violence. 15-year-old child comes out and says that women and men are equal no matter what.
Mhm.
Like 16-year-old kid says that we need to crack down on police brutality. You know what I mean? Like those are massive headlines that get a lot of attention. And so we as young people, we can bring attention. However, for us to do that, we have to be willing to also do the work.
Right.
Um, but I think also the work can be kind of fun too. You know what I mean? Like going around, like make it fun. Like I
Mhm.
canvas with my friends. We go, we get Starbucks, and then we just go to people's houses and tell them to vote for Jim McClellan. And I personally love that. That is one of my favorite days.
Right.
I don't like it when it's cold outside, but whatever. I'll take what I can get.
Yeah, make your work fun. Like make
Yeah.
what you want to do fun.
Yeah. Plus, if I had to choose, stand
Mhm.
out in the cold for 45 minutes telling people to vote or go and do geometry homework, I'm gonna go tell people to vote, you
That's
know?
how, yeah.
Um, but I feel like that's also like a kid thing to say and a kid problem, right?
Yeah.
Um, but no, I think that it's really also important to like be real. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
get down, understand that we're young people. If we want to listen to Taylor Swift as we do it, then we're gonna listen to Taylor Swift as we do it,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
it doesn't have to be serious. It doesn't have to be so pushed together, I guess. But it
Yeah.
can be like really fun.
Right. Accept what you have. Yeah.
Yeah,
Accept
yeah. Like
that.
be proud of it, you know? Like we're young, we're iconic, we're legends.
Yeah.
Um, we say slay. You know what I mean? Like there's
Bags.
like I mean, I don't know. Like I went to Congress and we're talking to these congressional officials and I said slay, you know, slay. I
Right.
wholeheartedly agree, Mr. Congressman. And they're like, pardon? And I'm like, slay. I agree.
Oh,
But no, it's you have to be willing to have fun with it. You know what I
right.
mean? This
Yeah.
work, it can get very, it can bring you down. It can get
Yeah.
a lot, like hearing everything all the time. It's really like it's heartbreaking, frankly.
Mhm.
Um, and that's also the point. Like the point is that this makes you sad, um, and it makes you want to fight. However, in that fight, you can't lose. You can't lose the thing that makes you you. You know what I mean? Um, so if that means you sit there and you laugh for 20 minutes a day, then you laugh for 20 minutes a day. You
Yeah.
know, that's what I do. Or if you have a dance break every hour, then you have a dance break every hour. You know what I mean? You always have to find something
Yeah.
to keep you happy because
Everything you do is so like it's so great and oh my
I
God.
I'm just trying. I'm trying my best out here, you
No,
know?
I respect that. That's like hard work and you're doing it as a high schooler. That just I respect that, Elijah.
No, but like again, we're a community. Like I'd be nothing without, you know, you and everybody else that's at Maggie Walker like cheering me
Mhm.
on. Like coming down from PE and saying I have a bill pass and everyone's like whooping and hollering, like that is how we do it as a unit. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah,
is not just me. That's everyone working together
right, right.
to solve a problem, which is really, really cool.
This is so great. I hope everything you do in the future turns out really well. And I know you have a bright future because you're already amazing right now. So thank you for coming on this podcast.
Of course. I'm happy to be
Thank you.
here.
Yeah, of course. Okay, well, I think that's it for today, but thank you so much.
Thank you.